Hello everyone, welcome to the Departamento Loratorum. My name is Max, and today I'd like to talk to you about orcs. As it's currently Orktober, I've been wanting to do a video on everyone's favorite green mushroom boys, but there's so much good stuff that I couldn't pick just one topic. So I decided that I would cover it all. I'm going to be going over some of my favorite pieces of orc lore in all of Warhammer 40k. This is going to be a more light, breezy video going over bits from orc codices, novels, and stories that I feel make them one of the most enjoyable and fun factions in Warhammer. I may do full videos on some of these topics in the future, but for now I just wanted to gush about them. It's not going to be comprehensive. I'm sure there's going to be a dozen more things that I can think of to add to this video as soon as I'm done, but please let me know anything in the comments that I missed and that you really enjoy about the orcs. But now, without any further ado, let's talk about some orcs. So I think I really should start with just the basic concept of the orcs as a race of being this hyper-violent xenos species that spreads throughout the galaxy and only exists to fight and win. It'd be very easy to make this a full horror, terrifying, grimdark concept, and there have been stories that have done that. And if you really like that, I'd recommend checking out the novel Rin's World by Steve Parker. That really portrays the orcs as a serious threat, with the novel having almost no humor from them and really portraying them as pure monsters to be defeated by the Crimson Fist heroes. But what I love most about the orcs is when they're not that serious, when they are sort of very goofy. And as my girlfriend said in the video where we ranked all of the Xenos races, you can make them a serious threat without making them serious. They can still be very funny even if they are serious antagonistic forces. There's a really fun, blunt, almost childlike simplicity to them and a lot of their weapons and culture that really makes them a treat to see and really helps sell them as the sort of comic relief of the setting. And it just makes them so likable and makes everything work, because if you're explaining orcs to somebody and they ask how can they do that, the answer, they just can, is perfectly fine and valid and acceptable. They're just able to do all this really crazy stuff because they're orcs and that's what they do, and I love them for it. I've never met a single Warhammer fan who did not at least appreciate the orcs and like what they brought to the setting, and I think that says a lot about them as a faction. It also makes it really great to see stories from their perspective, and I'm really happy we've been seeing a lot more orc novels from the Black Library recently because it's a lot of fun, especially considering they don't really want or need the same things as most humans, like they exist solely to fight, that is their only driving goal. It can provide a lot of interesting different perspectives on the Warhammer universe because things that humans find horrifying, the orcs absolutely love. Which moves us into one of our next points, because I really do enjoy whenever orcs go up against demons, because the orcs absolutely just have the time of their lives. They love warp travel, unlike most other races. They don't care if there's anything protecting them from the warp, because if a demon pops out of some weird boy's head, it's like, oh great, we just got a little scrap to break up the boredom until we get to the world. And it makes sense because, of course, the orcs would love an enemy that they can just kill over and over again and they'll keep coming back and will do all sorts of weird, crazy stuff. I think this is really shown off well in the Ghazghkull Thraka Prophet of the Waaaagh book by Nate Crowley, because when Ghazghkull and his boys take a Space Hulk that recently arrived, after a long period of inactivity, they are just absolutely over the moon to find demons on it to fight and are just having the time of their lives. It's a really joyful passage. You feel like you're there and you're just crumping demons with the boys. It's so fun. And it's another one of those things where, for a human, the Geller field going down and demons spawning in the spaceship is like, that's the end, goodbye, see you later. But for the orcs, it's just another Tuesday, and a pretty exciting one at that. And there's also the tale of Tuska Demon Killa, which goes even more in depth on how much orcs love fighting demons, but I'm thinking of doing a full video on that in the future, so I'll just sort of leave that there for now. Another novel that really shows off kind of the orcish way of thinking is the Siege of Castellax by C.L. Werner. The orcs invade a planet that is controlled by an Iron Warriors great company, and there's a lot of basically great scenes of the Iron Warriors sort of outthinking themselves and expecting the orcs to behave like pretty much any other attacking force would, but the orcs sort of circumventing them by just acting very straightforward and simply and not falling for some of their traps. I think a great example of this is when the Iron Warriors create a ring of nuclear warhead mines around their city and even lure the orcs into one of them and set it off, and it creates this huge crater, and they're like, of course the orcs are going to need to take forever to screen this minefield to try to avoid any future accidents, but the orcs are just like, well, we know there's not a mine where the one already went off, so they just build a bridge over the big crater, and it buys them maybe a couple days at most. It's just they're so clever in a very stupid way, and it's very funny and also very great to see them out-siege the Iron Warriors. That's always hilarious. For some more recent stuff, in post-8th edition lore, we of course have the Great Rift spreading across the galaxy, and causing mayhem for most other races, and it has caused mayhem for the Orks as well. Per the 8th edition Codex, it has swallowed up worlds and warbands, and demons are spilling out and attacking Orks willy-nilly. But as we already established, Orks love fighting demons, and they view the Great Rift as just the maw of one of their Ork gods, Gork, tearing open to swallow the galaxy, and that any Ork who's been consumed by it and the demons spreading out of it are just because Gork kind of thinks the boys are a little bit weak and needs to toughen up, and they've even been using the Great Rift to just sort of fly into it in their ships and be transported wherever, hoping it'll lead them to a good fight. And it's just so ingenious to take what is a big setback for the Imperium and most other races, and are like, well, we're just going to try to use it to see where it takes us and get some good fighting. It's just, yeah, they don't care, they're simple, but they're perfectly suited for the galaxy they're in, and nothing can ever really hold them back for more than like a few seconds. They're just perfect. And to talk more about some warpy randomness, we have one of my favorite Orc stories of all time from the 4th edition Codex. It's the tale of the Lost Waaaagh, following Warlord Grotz, who was a noted kleptomaniac. And he launches a Waaaagh, goes into the warp, and ends up actually traveling back in time to before he even left originally. So he ends up hunting himself down and killing himself to get a second copy of his favorite gun. And then the resulting confusion stops the Waaaagh dead in his tracks, and that's just great because you don't really see a lot of time travel shenanigans with the warp. It exists in lore, but it's really great to see it firsthand, and especially in such a way that it makes even the Orcs scratch their head and be like, what the hell just happened? It's just fantastic. It'd be cool to see a short story or novel or something on this story eventually, but I think even as short as it is, it's creative enough that you can really envision it in your mind, and you don't really need a full-scale story for it. There's also some great stuff that you can see in even older books like Here We Go and Waaaagh Orcs, really old source books from 1st and 2nd edition. There's some old and wacky squig designs in there like bagpipe squigs, gob squigs, and face-eater squigs, which is basically just a giant mouth that the Orc will try to eat before it'll bite his own face off, and either he'll win and get a nice meal, or he'll fail and all the Orcs around will have a really funny thing to laugh about. Some of this stuff is mentioned. I believe the Euler squigs were referenced in the 8th edition Codex, but we don't really see it that much, and most of the squigs we see are either the standard little red balls or bigger red balls that the beast snaggas ride on. I do wish that there were some more creative squig designs and we saw some of the more unique stuff. And that also goes with the old bionics that were shown in this book. There was a lot of really creative and weird stuff that looks like it'd be very fun to kit bash, especially some of the leg stuff. I really love the sort of hover orc. It really ties into a lot of the playful goofiness of the Orcs, as does this image in the Speed Freak section. I really love it, especially the Orc in the front taking his little Grot and Squig buddy on a ride. It just looks so fun and wholesome. It's great. And speaking of Grotz, they're great. I would really love to see a whole Gretchen faction because all of the lore we have for them is just hilarious. I love how cowardly they are. I love how just sort of clever they are at the same time. And another one of my favorite pieces of lore comes from the 4th edition Codex, where it's the Grotz that are working on the mech guns, and it's said that they're often deafened by the mech guns very quickly, so they have to resort to a crude form of sign language. But that this rarely works out well because the Grotz can only carry so many signs at any one time. And I also love the Killa Kans descriptions. That's when an orc mech and an orc dock will come together. They'll create basically a small death dread and wire a grot into it to create a little war machine. And you'd think that the normally cowardly grots would hate this and try to escape, but no, they want to get into the death dread and will often try their hardest to be the grot that's wired in. And they do this because as soon as they are actually successfully put into the Killa Kans, they go on a rampage attacking everyone who's ever wronged them throughout the orc camp, and all the other orcs who aren't being victimized think this is hilarious. The mech and the dock look at it like proud parents. But even once they are in this little dreadnought, the Grotz are still cowards and they might run from battle. It's just hilarious, and it's a great image to see this giant tin can with buzzsaws and machine guns just run away because a space marine showed up. And speaking of being wired into things, the 6th edition Codex gave us the Maniac of Calverna, and he conquered the Forge world of Magnos Majoris and the Calverna system and wired himself into its central processing engine. So he has access to a ton of information, but it's all driven him completely insane, and his forces will go out and just fight in completely random ways, even for orcs with no strategy. That's just hilarious. Another thing I think is really fun is that the orcs really don't understand how human rank system works, because orcs go by, of course, the biggest one is in charge, and humans are all roughly the same size. But some of them, especially like blood axes, have kind of figured out that, oh, okay, the ones with the fancy hats are in charge, which, looking at the Imperium, that is basically true. So sometimes they will steal or wear a fancy hat, which looks hilarious. And also, they do recognize that Space Marines are good fighters, obviously, and many war bosses will take Space Marine helmets and use them as trophies. And according to the 8th edition Codex, this is not only because Space Marines are good fighters and they want to show off that they beat one, but also because they really like that they come in a big variety of colors, and it works well for the more ostentatious war bosses to show off. That is pretty great, and also pretty similar to how I like to paint the Space Marine helmets on my Chaos trophy racks, because it shows off like, oh, they fought against a lot of different people, and it's not just the same color over and over again, so I guess they're right there. I can't argue with them. Another area in which the orcs are completely right is their money. So orcs use Teef for their money. This has been something that's been confirmed in pretty much every codex, but I can specifically reference the 4th and 8th edition codex for this, and it makes just so much sense because orc Teef come in like a shark. They constantly shed them throughout their lives, so every orc is going to have constant access to at least some teeth. And also the teeth are biodegradable, so no orc can really hoard them. And of course the easiest way to get more teeth is to just go out and beat the crap out of other orcs and take theirs. So it really kind of solves a lot of issues that most other races are dealing with their money in a very simple and almost elegant way. It's just very clever, and I really would like to know who the first person to pitch that was, because that is just a great, ingenious idea, and also very orky at the same time. Another thing that's great is something from the 8th edition Codex, where it says that the Bad Moons grow teeth at a greater rate than other orcs, but that the other orcs really don't mind this, because they can always just go out and punch a Bad Moon in the face and take his teeth. And a lot of war bosses even keep a mob of Bad Moons around exactly for that reason, just to have some extra spending money if they need it. Again, it's very clever, but also very hilarious and orky. And I love how all of this just encourages them to go out and fight and punch each other in the face, because honestly, that probably was the biggest draw to them to adopting the money system, is the fact that it's an excuse to go out and punch your friend in the face and steal his teeth. Another interesting orky take on a complex topic is seen in the Gazkulthraka Prophet of the Waaaagh book again, where it shows that most orcs don't understand the human concepts of sex and gender. This makes sense because they are a monogendered race and they really wouldn't care about such a thing because it doesn't really relate to fighting at all. When Makari is even telling his story about Gazkul's life, for the first bit he uses they pronouns. And he only really stops because the Imperials tell him to call Gazkul he, even if it doesn't make sense to him, just because it makes sense to them. It's another one of those things where it's just interesting to see how orcs view a concept that doesn't really apply to them, and you could even say that all orcs are kind of non-binary. Moving on from that, the Freebooters are also a very fun group. I'm definitely going to be doing a video on them at some point in the future. If you don't know, Freebooters are orcs that have left or been kicked out of their tribe for some reason and now essentially travel the galaxy in spaceships under captains or other leaders, looting and pillaging across the galaxy. And what makes them so great to me is that they're just pirates. Like, they look and act almost exactly like classic Age of Sail pirates. And I think there's two really fun possibilities here. One, either the orcs found out about the ancient human pirates at some point and decided to adopt them, even including things like a jolly orc and the classic pirate hat. Or, and I think this is the funnier option, the orcs just independently developed this concept and have been running with it, and I don't know why, that just really appeals to me that like, oh yeah, this is apparently such a universal concept that even orcs thought of it. I will definitely, like I said, have to do a Freebooter video because they're really fun. And I think if I ever started an orc army, it would either be Freebooters or maybe Death Skulls, I'd have to see. But honestly, one of my favorite parts of orc lore of all time is probably just the existence of Gorkamorka as a setting. I love it so much I did a whole video on it. It's all about orcs being trapped on a desert world and trying to get back to the stars so they can continue their Waaaagh, and they're fighting over scrap to help build a spaceship, and they're arguing over whether it looks like the orc god Gork or Mork. So you've got the little factional conflicts there, which, you know, for other races would be very silly, but to orcs, of course, this is serious business. What if you say it's Gork, but it's actually Mork and he doesn't let you on? You could be left behind from the Waaaagh. And there's other factions too, like mutant humans and rebel Grotz, and it's just hilarious, and it's just so great. Mad Max and orcs just work so well together, and it's really great to just see like groups of orcs fighting in a desert in vehicles, having a lot of fun, getting scrap, bashing each other's head in. It's also hilarious how the biggest theological concept we've seen for orcs is, what does this big spaceship look more like, Gork or Mork? And the way they solved that was by saying, it's both, take your fighting out into the waste and keep it out of the city. It's just so, again, simple and elegant and perfectly orky. I also love the rebel Grotz in there, they're just hilarious. Leftist infighting is universal. And even the other races, like the Muties and the Diggas, they're hilarious. And yeah, I really just wish that this setting was revisited, if not in a whole new tabletop game system, then in like a novel or a video game, just something that really shows it off to a new generation, because Gorkamorka is too good to just be left behind. So those were some of my favorite things about the orcs. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. Please comment below some of your favorite pieces of orc lore and any other green skin topics that you'd like to see me cover. They're just a fun race, and it's really impressive to see how consistent and consistently good they've been across Warhammer history. I love digging into them. They are by far my favorite Xenos race. Sorry Necrons, sorry Eldar, it's not really a contest. If you enjoyed this video, please consider becoming a patron or channel member. You can join awesome members like Wolfrey, Grubus, Arrow404, Sully, Mr. Danger Zone, and Isfly, and get access to cool perks like members-only polls and early access to videos. Please also don't forget to like and subscribe, it really helps the channel in the YouTube algorithm. For now, thank you and have a great day. Bye!